Get your filthy hands off that pump.
Sir, I'm just getting gas.
Shut your mouth! I don't take orders from your kind.
I'm only trying to...
What? Stink up the whole station? I could smell you before I even pulled in.
Officer, please.
Don't you officer me. Animals don't get to talk. Stand there and pray. I don't drag you across this lot by your hair.
I just want to leave.
Leave? You don't leave. You crawl. On your knees like the trash you are.
I'd like to make one phone call. A phone call.
Call whoever you want, sweetheart. Call God himself. Nobody's coming to save you.
She dialed one number, put it on speaker, and the voice that came through that phone turned every person at that gas station to stone. 3 hours before that phone call, Serena Wallace left the state capitol building through the back entrance. She always used the back. No motorcade, no security detail, no flags on the fender. Just a 10-year-old black Chevy Tahoe with a dent on the rear bumper and a car seat still strapped in the back from when her granddaughter visited last weekend. She wore a plain gray cotton dress, flat sandals, no jewelry except the thin gold wedding band on her left hand. Her hair was pulled back in a simple twist, the kind she could do with one hand while holding a coffee in the other. If you passed her on the sidewalk, you would think she was a school teacher, maybe a church secretary, maybe someone's grandmother picking up groceries on the way home. You would never guess she had breakfast with the governor of the state that morning. You would never guess she had breakfast with him every morning for the past 26 years, because Serena Wallace was his wife. But Serena never introduced herself that way. Not at the dry cleaner, not at the grocery store, not even at her own dentist's office. The staff there still called her Mrs. W and had no idea who Mr. W was. That was by design. Serena had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Baltimore, raised by a grandmother who cleaned office buildings at night and pressed church clothes before dawn. She learned early that titles didn't make people. Hands did. Silence did. The way you treated someone who couldn't do anything for you, that told the whole story. So when Daniel Wallace won the governorship 4 years ago, Serena made one request. Keep me out of it. No interviews, no photo ops, no First Lady luncheons unless absolutely necessary. She attended the inauguration, smiled for the cameras, then disappeared back into her life like smoke through a screen door. She volunteered at a free legal clinic on Tuesdays. She drove her own car. She pumped her own gas. And on this particular Thursday afternoon in late September, she was driving home from a 2-day policy meeting in the Capitol, windows down, gospel music low on the radio. The kind of tired that settles behind your eyes and makes the highway lines blur into one long ribbon. She needed gas. She needed coffee. She needed to stretch her legs. The Ridgefield fuel stop appeared on the right side of Route 34, like it had been there since the earth cooled. A 2-pump station with a flat-roofed convenience store, a flickering open sign, and a parking lot that was more gravel than pavement. The kind of place where locals filled up and strangers kept driving. Serena pulled in at 4:17 in the afternoon. The sun was still high, pressing heat into the asphalt so thick you could see it shimmer above the pumps. A dusty Ford pickup sat at pump 1. A minivan with a cracked windshield idled near the air machine. Inside the store, a 19-year-old cashier named Tommy Beckett was restocking cigarette cartons behind the counter and watching the clock. Across the street, parked in the shadow of a dead oak tree, sat a white Dodge Charger with Ridgefield County Sheriff printed along the side. Behind the wheel, Officer Bryce Harmon was finishing a gas station burrito and scrolling his phone. Harmon had been with the department for 11 years, 43 years old, 2 disciplinary warnings on file, both sealed. A reputation among the locals that landed somewhere between strict and stay out of his way. He had a habit of running plates on cars that didn't look like they belonged, And right now, he was watching a black woman in a gray dress step out of an old Tahoe and walk toward the pump. He set the burrito down, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and reached for his door handle. Tommy inside the store saw it too. He stopped stacking cartons. He had seen Harmon do this before: pick someone, find a reason, make it stick. Tommy's stomach dropped the way it always did, the way it had dropped 6 times this year already. He pulled his phone from his back pocket, not to record, not yet, just to have it ready. Outside, Serena Wallace swiped her card, selected regular unleaded, and placed the nozzle into the tank. She had no idea what was walking toward her across that gravel lot. Harmon crossed the gravel lot in 12 long strides. His boots crunched with each step, the sound sharp enough to cut through the hum of the gas pump. He didn't hurry. He never did. Hurrying meant you were unsure. Harmon was never unsure. Serena heard the boots before she saw him. She turned her head slightly, one hand still on the nozzle, and watched a uniformed officer approach from her left side. Broad shoulders, mirrored sunglasses, a jaw set tight enough to crack walnuts. His name tag caught the sun, Harmon, and his right hand rested on his belt, 2 inches from his holster. "Ma'am." He stopped 3 feet away. Not a greeting, a summons. "Step away from the vehicle." Serena removed the nozzle and placed it back in the cradle. "Good afternoon, officer. Is something wrong?" "I'll decide what's wrong. License and registration." "Of course." She reached slowly into the Tahoe through the open window, pulled her wallet from the center console, and handed him her driver's license. Then she opened the glove box, retrieved the registration, and held that out too. Every movement deliberate. Every movement visible. The way her grandmother had taught her 30 years ago. Slow hands save lives, baby. Let them see everything. Harmon snatched both documents without looking at her face. He studied the license for a long time. Longer than it takes to read a name and a date of birth. He flipped the registration over, then back again. He tilted his sunglasses down and looked at the Tahoe. The dent, the faded paint, the car seat in the back. "This vehicle yours?" "Yes, sir." "You sure about that?" "Because this registration says the owner lives at 1200 Maple Ridge Drive. That's Governor's Row. You telling me you live on Governor's Row?" "I do." He laughed, a short, dry bark that had no warmth in it. "Right, and I'm the Pope." He tucked the documents into his chest pocket, her documents, not his, and pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, I need a plate run on a black Chevy Tahoe." He read the plate number slowly, deliberately, loud enough for the gathering customers to hear every digit. "Officer, my documents are valid. You can see that. What I can see is a vehicle that doesn't match its driver. What I can see is someone who doesn't belong in this part of town, driving a car registered to an address she can't possibly afford. You don't know what I can afford." Harmon removed his sunglasses. His eyes were flat, blue and flat, like lake ice in January. "I know exactly what you can afford, sweetheart. I've been doing this job for 11 years. I can spot a fake registration and a stolen vehicle from across the parking lot." "This vehicle is not stolen." "Then you won't mind stepping out while I confirm that." "I'm already out." "Then step farther. Over there." He pointed to the front of the Tahoe. "Hands on the hood. Spread them." Serena looked at him for a long 3 seconds. Her jaw tightened. But she walked to the hood of her car and placed both palms flat on the hot metal. The sun had baked it all afternoon. It burned. She didn't flinch. Tommy watched from inside the store. His phone was in his hand now, camera open, recording through the window. His hands were shaking, but he kept the frame steady. He had seen this before. The approach, the tone, the slow tightening of the noose. But something about this one felt different. The woman wasn't braking. A white pickup pulled in at pump 1. The driver, a heavy man in a ball cap, stepped out, saw what was happening, and leaned against his truck to watch. He crossed his arms like he was settling in for a show. He didn't look concerned. He looked entertained. "Dispatch confirms the registration is clean," the radio crackled. "No warrants, no flags." Harmon didn't blink. He pressed the radio button. "Copy. Continuing investigation on scene." Serena turned her head slightly. "Your dispatch just confirmed everything is clean." "I heard what dispatch said. That doesn't mean I'm done." He walked to the passenger side of the Tahoe and opened the door without asking. "You don't have consent to search my vehicle, officer." "I don't need your consent. I have probable cause." "What probable cause?" "The fact that I said so." He leaned inside, rifled through the glove box she had just closed, pulled papers from the center console, tossed a road atlas onto the passenger seat, found a manila folder, and opened it on the roof of the car. Inside were legal documents, policy briefs, printed emails, a memo with the state seal at the top. He glanced at them the way someone glances at a foreign menu. Nothing registered. Nothing clicked. "What is all this?" "Work documents." "Work?" He said the word like it tasted bad. "What kind of work you do that gives you papers with government seals?" "I'd rather not say." "You'd rather not say." He slammed the folder shut and tossed it onto the passenger seat. Papers scattered across the floorboard. "Let me tell you something. When I ask a question, you answer. You don't get to rather not. Not here. Not with me." He moved to the back seat, pulled out her overnight bag, unzipped it on the hood, and dumped the contents in one motion. Clothes, a phone charger, reading glasses, a small leather Bible with a cracked spine, a framed photo of 2 young women in graduation caps, smiling so wide you could almost hear the laughter. He picked up the photo, studied it like evidence, then set it face down on the burning hood. "Who are these people?" "My daughters." "Your daughters." He dropped the empty bag on the gravel. "They know their mama's out here driving stolen property?" "The car is not stolen. Your own dispatch confirmed it." "My dispatch confirmed a registration. That doesn't confirm you. For all I know, you stole the registration too." A second car pulled in. An older woman, white hair, floral blouse, stepped out and immediately froze when she saw Serena pressed against the hood, with Harmon looming over the open car door. Her name was Mrs. Ellen Henderson, 71 years old, retired school principal. She had lived in Ridgefield her entire life. She knew Harmon. Everyone knew Harmon. "Bryce, what on earth is going on?" she called from across the lot. "Stay back, Mrs. Henderson. Official business." "That woman doesn't look like official business. She looks terrified." "I said stay back." Mrs. Henderson didn't move. She didn't leave either. She stood by her car with her purse clutched to her chest, lips pressed into a thin white line, and watched. Now a third vehicle arrived, then a fourth. The lot was filling up, the way lots fill up when trouble plants itself in plain view. People sensed it, the way animals sense a storm, not the rain itself, but the pressure drop before it. 2 teenagers sat on the curb near the air machine, phones raised, recording. A man in a delivery uniform stepped halfway out of his van, 1 foot on the running board, watching. A woman held her toddler on her hip and covered the child's ears with her free hand. Harmon didn't care about the audience. If anything, it fed him. He straightened his back, rolled his shoulders, and turned back to Serena with the posture of a man performing for a crowd. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, loud enough for every phone to pick up. "You're going to tell me where you got this car. You're going to tell me where you got those documents. And then you're going to shut up and wait while I decide what to do with you." Serena closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. When she opened them, something had shifted. The patience was still there, but underneath it, somewhere deep, somewhere she had spent 52 years learning to keep locked, a door was opening. She looked at the framed photo of her daughters lying face down on the burning hood. She looked at her Bible on the metal next to the scattered clothes. She looked at her reading glasses, sitting in a puddle of spilled coffee near the gas pump. She looked at the strangers recording her humiliation, their faces lit blue by their screens. And she made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of pride, out of something quieter, something that had been waiting a very long time. "Officer," she said. Her voice was low and even. "Are you finished?" Harmon leaned against the Tahoe and smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the kind that says, "I own this moment and every moment after it." "Sweetheart, I haven't even started." Serena's calm made Harmon angrier. He had done this dozens of times, maybe more. The routine was always the same. You press, they crack. They cry, or they yell, or they beg. And once they do, you own them. That was the formula. That was how control worked. But this woman was not cracking. She stood at the hood of her car, with her palms flat on the hot metal, and looked at him the way you look at weather. Not with fear, not with defiance, with patience. The kind of patience that comes from having seen worse and survived it. And that patience made Harmon's skin crawl. "You think you're smart, don't you?" He stepped closer, close enough that his shadow fell across her hands. "You think staying quiet makes you look innocent? I think staying quiet is my right." "Your right," he spat the word. "Let me tell you about rights. Rights are for people who earn them. Rights are for people who contribute. You show up in my town, in a car you can't explain, with documents you won't talk about, and you want to lecture me about rights? I'm not lecturing anyone, officer." "No? Then what are you doing? Standing there with that look on your face like you're better than me? Like you know something I don't?" Serena said nothing. She held his gaze the way you hold a match, steady, knowing it would burn out on its own. Harmon turned to the growing crowd. 6 people now. 8. Some with phones raised, some just watching with their arms crossed. He didn't lower his voice. He wanted every one of them to hear. "You know what people like this do?" He jabbed his thumb toward Serena without looking at her. "They come into a town like this, help themselves to whatever they can grab, and then when someone calls them on it, they play the victim. Every single time. Like clockwork." No one in the crowd responded, but no one challenged him either. The silence was its own kind of agreement, and Harmon fed on it. He turned back to Serena. "Where did you really get this car?" "It's my car." "I don't believe you." "That doesn't change the fact." His radio crackled again. He ignored it. His focus was locked on her now, and his jaw was working the way it worked when he was building towards something. His hands flexed at his sides. Open, closed, open, closed. "Take off your ring," he said. Serena blinked. "Excuse me?" "That ring, on your left hand. Take it off. I want to see it." "This is my wedding ring." "I didn't ask what it was. I asked you to take it off. Could be stolen property." "My wedding ring is not stolen property." "Everything about you looks stolen to me." He said it flat, no emotion, like he was reading a weather report. The car, the documents, the ring, none of it adds up. Serena did not remove the ring. She curled her fingers inward and pressed her fist against the hood. The metal burned her knuckles, but she didn't let go. Inside the store, Tommy had moved from the window to the door. He was still recording. But now he had dialed 911 on a second phone, the store's landline, and was whispering into the receiver. "There's an officer at Ridgefield Fuel Stop. He's got a woman detained. She hasn't done anything. I've seen him do this before. Please send someone." The dispatcher asked for details. Tommy gave them. His voice was barely above a breath, because the last time he had reported Harmon, Harmon had found out. And the last time Harmon found out, Tommy's windshield had been shattered in the store parking lot at 2 a.m. No witnesses, no cameras pointing that direction, just a rock and a message. But Tommy kept talking, because the woman outside hadn't stopped standing. Back at the Tahoe, Harmon reached for Serena's wrist. Not gently. He grabbed it and twisted it behind her back in one motion, pressing her chest against the hood. The metal seared through her cotton dress. She gasped, a short, involuntary sound that she immediately swallowed. "You're being detained," he said, "for suspicious behavior and failure to comply." "I have complied with everything you've asked." "You failed to answer my questions. That's obstruction." "Remaining silent is not obstruction. It's the Fifth Amendment." "The Fifth Amendment," he laughed, and the sound was ugly, a bark with teeth in it. "You hear that, folks? We got ourselves a constitutional scholar pumping gas." The man in the ball cap at Pump 1 chuckled. The teenagers on the curb kept recording. The delivery driver stepped fully out of his van now, arms folded, face unreadable. Mrs. Henderson took 3 steps forward. "Bryce Harmon, you let go of that woman right now. She hasn't done a single thing wrong." Harmon didn't turn around. "Mrs. Henderson, if you take one more step, I will arrest you for interfering with a law enforcement action. I am not playing." "You're not playing? You're performing, and everyone here can see it." "Back up now." Mrs. Henderson stopped. But she didn't retreat. She pulled her own phone from her purse with shaking hands, held it up, and pressed record. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "I'm recording this. I want that on the record." "Record whatever you want, old lady. It won't change a damn thing." Harmon turned back to Serena. He still had her wrist pinned. He reached with his free hand and pulled the handcuffs from his belt. The metal clinked. A small, precise sound that cut through the lot like a blade through paper. "Last chance," he said. "Tell me where you got this car, or these go on." "The car is mine, I've told you. Your dispatch confirmed it." Wrong answer. He opened the cuffs. That was when a second patrol car pulled into the lot. Officer Dale Caldwell stepped out, mid-30s, lean, with the posture of a man who followed rules because he didn't have the courage to break them. He had been Harmon's partner on and off for 3 years. He knew the drill. But something about this scene made him pause at the door of his cruiser. "Bryce, what's the situation?" "Stolen vehicle, uncooperative suspect, standard procedure." Caldwell looked at the Tahoe, looked at the woman pressed against the hood, looked at the scattered belongings, the clothes, the Bible, the photo frame face down on the metal. He looked at the crowd with their phones raised like candles at a vigil. "Dispatch said the plates came back clean," Caldwell said carefully. "Dispatch doesn't see what I see." "What do you see, Bryce?" Harmon turned slowly. His face was red now, flushed from the neck up, and his voice dropped to something low and private. "I see someone who doesn't belong here. And I see a partner who needs to decide whose side he's on. Right now." Caldwell swallowed hard. He looked at Serena. She was watching him, not begging, not pleading, just watching. Like she was giving him a chance to be the person he might still become. A window opening for exactly 3 seconds. Caldwell looked away. He walked to the other side of the Tahoe and planted himself there like a second wall. He said nothing. Serena closed her eyes. The last thin thread of hope she had placed in the second officer snapped like a guitar string. She was alone, in a gravel lot, in a town she didn't know, surrounded by people who were either watching or laughing or frozen. Harmon clicked one cuff around her left wrist. The metal bit into her skin, cold despite the heat. Her wedding ring pressed hard against the steel. He reached for the other hand. "I want my phone call," Serena said. "You don't get a phone call. This isn't a movie. Under state law, I have the right to contact someone before being formally detained. Section 14-22. Harmon paused. Not because he knew the statute. He didn't. He paused because she quoted it like someone who had read it, like someone who had it memorized, like someone who had helped write it. But the pause lasted only a second. He shoved the thought away the way he shoved away anything that didn't fit his version of the world. Fine. He grabbed her phone off the passenger seat, held it up, just out of her reach, then tossed it at her feet. It hit the gravel and skidded against her sandal. The screen cracked, a thin fracture running diagonally from corner to corner, splitting her lock screen photo of her daughters in two. Make your little call. Call your pastor, call your baby daddy, call whoever makes you feel safe at night. Serena bent down and picked up the phone with her free hand, the cuff dangling from the other wrist. She wiped the gravel dust from the cracked screen with her thumb. She stood up straight. She looked at Harmon one final time, not with anger, not with defeat, with something he had never seen on anyone he had pinned to a hood before. Certainty. "I'll only need one call," she said. Harmon spread his arms wide and grinned at the crowd like a ringmaster. "You hear that, everybody? One call. One magical phone call that's gonna save the day." He cupped his hands around his mouth. "Call whoever you want, sweetheart. Call the president. Call Jesus Christ himself. Nobody's coming to save you. Not here. Not today." The teenagers whistled. The man in the ball cap shook his head, grinning. Somewhere behind the store, a dog barked twice and went silent. Serena pressed one button. Speed dial. Number 1. She tapped the speaker icon. The phone rang once. Twice. The lot went quiet. Not because anyone decided to be quiet, because the air changed. The way air changes right before lightning strikes. You can't see it, you can't name it, but every nerve in your body knows. The line connected. A voice came through the speaker. Deep, male, controlled. The kind of voice that has given press conferences and signed executive orders and spoken to rooms that decide the shape of law. "Serena, is everything all right?" Harmon was still smiling when she answered. "No, it's not. And I need you to hear what happens next." The voice on the speaker filled the gas station lot the way thunder fills a valley. Not loud, not shouting, just present, everywhere at once. "Serena, talk to me. What's happening?" Serena held the phone at chest height. The cracked screen caught the sun and threw a thin line of light across Harmon's badge. She spoke clearly, steadily, the way a witness speaks on a stand. "I stopped to get gas at Ridgefield Fuel Stop on Route 34. An officer approached me, demanded my documents, searched my vehicle without consent, dumped my belongings on the hood, and placed a handcuff on my left wrist. My registration came back clean through his own dispatch. He has not stated any valid probable cause." The voice on the phone was silent for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like 30. When it returned, it had changed. The warmth was gone. What replaced it was something institutional, something that had weight behind it. The weight of an office, a seal, and every enforcement mechanism a state government can deploy. "Officer, are you listening?" Harmon stared at the phone. His smile was still there, but it had frozen, a mask left on too long. "Who is this?" "This is Governor Daniel Wallace." The words landed on the lot like a physical thing, like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples moved outward, through the teenagers who lowered their phones an inch, through the man in the ball cap who uncrossed his arms, through Mrs. Henderson, who pressed her hand to her mouth, through Caldwell, who took one full step backward from the Tahoe. Harmon's face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds: confusion, disbelief, calculation, fear. They moved across his features like clouds crossing the sun, each one darker than the last. That's not," he swallowed. His throat clicked. "Anyone can say that. That doesn't prove—" "Officer, I need your full name and badge number, now." The voice did not ask. It did not request. It issued an instruction with the calm precision of someone who had issued thousands of them and had never once needed to repeat himself. Harmon's hand went to his badge instinctively. His fingers touched the metal like it was suddenly hot. Bryce Harmon, badge 2214, Ridgefield County Sheriff's Department. Badge 2214, Ridgefield County. I have it. A pause. The sound of something being written. "Now let me be very clear about what you've done today, Officer Harmon. The woman you detained, the woman whose belongings you scattered across the hood of her car, the woman you handcuffed without cause, that woman is my wife." The silence that followed was the loudest thing that gas station had ever heard. Harmon's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. The color drained from his face in a slow wave, starting at the forehead and rolling down like a curtain falling. His hands dropped to his sides. The second handcuff, the open one, slipped from his fingers and hit the gravel with a tiny, metallic sound that everyone heard. Caldwell was already backing toward his cruiser. His face was gray. His lips were moving, but whatever he was saying was too quiet for anyone to catch. It might have been a prayer. It might have been a resignation. "I'm dispatching state police to your location," the governor continued. "They will be there within 20 minutes. Captain Elaine Morris is leading the detail. You will surrender your badge and your service weapon to her upon arrival. You will not leave that parking lot. You will not touch my wife again. And you will not speak to her. Not one more word. Am I understood?" Harmon nodded. Then he realized the governor couldn't see him. "Yes," he said. The word came out broken, split down the middle like the screen on Serena's phone. "Yes, sir." "Serena." "I'm here." "Are you hurt?" She looked at her left wrist. The cuff had left a red line across her skin, pressed into the flesh beside her wedding band. She looked at her belongings, the clothes, the Bible, the photo of her daughters, still scattered on the hood. She looked at the coffee stain on her dress from where she had been pressed against the metal. "Nothing that won't heal," she said. "I'm on my way. Don't let anyone touch anything. Everything stays exactly as it is." The line stayed open. The governor did not hang up, and everyone in that lot understood why. The phone was no longer a phone. It was a witness, a microphone, a courtroom in the palm of her hand. Harmon stood in the middle of the gravel lot with his arms at his sides and his badge catching the last of the afternoon sun. He looked smaller now. Not physically. Something else had shrunk. The authority that had filled him like air in a balloon, the swagger, the volume, the spread arms and the carnival bark, all of it had leaked out through a hole he couldn't find and couldn't plug. Mrs. Henderson lowered her phone. She didn't stop recording, but she lowered it just enough to wipe the tears running down her cheeks. Tommy stepped outside the store for the first time. He stood in the doorway with the landline still in his hand, the 911 dispatcher still on the other end. and he watched a woman in a gray cotton dress bend down in a gas station parking lot and pick up a framed photograph of her daughters. She wiped the dust from the glass with the hem of her dress. She held it against her chest, and she waited. The first state police cruiser arrived in 14 minutes, then a second, then a third. They came down Route 34 in a tight formation, lights on but no sirens, the way you approach a scene that's already contained but not yet resolved. Captain Elaine Morris stepped out of the lead vehicle. Tall, sharp-jawed, close-cropped silver hair, and the kind of posture that suggested she had never once leaned against anything in her life. She wore pressed blues and carried a clipboard. Her boots hit the gravel, and every head in the lot turned. She surveyed the scene in 4 seconds. The woman by the Tahoe, the scattered belongings on the hood, the handcuff on her left wrist. 2 Ridgefield officers, one standing in the middle of the lot like a man who had forgotten where he was, the other pressed against his patrol car, trying to become invisible. Morris walked directly to Harmon. Badge, weapon, now. Harmon reached for his badge with numb fingers. He fumbled the pin 3 times before unclipping it. He held it out the way a child holds a broken toy, with both hands, unable to explain how it happened. Morris placed it in an evidence bag her deputy was already holding open. Service weapon. Harmon unholstered his sidearm, ejected the magazine, and cleared the chamber. His hands were shaking badly enough that the bullet bounced off the gravel. He handed the gun over, grip first. Officer Bryce Harmon, you are suspended, effective immediately, pending a full internal affairs investigation and concurrent criminal inquiry by the State Bureau of Investigation. You will not contact the complainant or any witness present at this location. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Officer Caldwell. Caldwell flinched. He had been inching toward his cruiser door, one hand on the handle. He stopped. Step forward. He did, slowly, like walking toward a cliff. You responded as backup. At any point did you intervene to stop what you were witnessing? Caldwell's eyes moved to Serena, then to the ground. No, ma'am. Did you witness Officer Harmon conduct an unauthorized search? Yes, ma'am. Did you witness him physically restrain the complainant without probable cause? Yes, ma'am. And you did nothing. It wasn't a question. Morris let it sit in the air, the way a judge lets a verdict sit before sentencing. Caldwell's chin dropped to his chest. You are also suspended, badge and weapon. Caldwell surrendered both without a word. His hands were steadier than Harmon's, but his eyes were wet. He blinked rapidly and looked at the sky like it might offer something. It didn't. Morris turned to Serena. The shift was immediate. Military precision replaced by something warmer. She stopped at arm's length and spoke gently. Mrs. Wallace, I'm Captain Elaine Morris, State Police. The governor briefed me. Do you require medical attention? Serena looked at the red line on her wrist, the bruise forming beneath her wedding band. No, thank you. An EMT is on standby if you change your mind. Would you like to file a formal report now or at the station? Now, Serena said. Every word, while it's fresh. Morris nodded and turned to her deputy. Secure the scene. Photograph the vehicle, the hood, the complainant's wrist, every item removed from the car. Collect all civilian footage, names, contact, consent. Pull the store's security system within the hour. Tommy appeared at the store entrance holding a USB drive. I already copied the last 2 hours, he said. His voice was steady for the first time all afternoon. And I have my own recording, 41 minutes. Morris looked at him. A small nod, the kind that says more than words. Serena's phone buzzed. The cracked screen lit up. A text from Daniel. 15 minutes out. Don't leave. I love you. She pressed the phone against her chest. right next to the photograph of her daughters, and sat down on the running board of her Tahoe. For the first time in over an hour, she exhaled, long and slow, like setting down something impossibly heavy. The sun dropped behind the tree line. The station's fluorescent lights flickered on, buzzing softly, and in the gravel lot, 2 empty holsters hung from 2 suspended officers who stood apart from each other and couldn't look at anyone, least of all themselves. The video hit the internet at 9:43 that evening. Tommy uploaded his 41-minute recording to every platform he could think of: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. He titled it simply, Officer Harmon versus the Governor's Wife. By midnight, it had 400,000 views. By sunrise, 4 million. By the time the morning news anchors sat down with coffee and teleprompters, the number had passed 12 million and was still climbing. The hashtag came next. Hashtag Justice for Serena. It trended nationally within 6 hours. CNN ran a segment. NBC led with it at noon. Local stations replayed the same clip on a loop, the moment the governor's voice came through the speaker and Harmon's face collapsed like a house with its foundation pulled out. Then came the second hashtag. Hashtag Who is Harmon? And that one opened a door that should have been opened years ago. Because Bryce Harmon had a history. And that history had been buried under sealed files, transferred complaints, and a department that treated accountability like a foreign language. The State Bureau of Investigation pulled Harmon's personnel file within 24 hours. What they found was a pattern so consistent it read like a manual. 14 formal complaints over 11 years. 14. 9 filed by people of color. 3 involved physical force during routine stops. 2 involved planted evidence. Both charges later dropped when the cases fell apart. Every single complaint had been reviewed by the same internal affairs officer, Lieutenant Greg Fenton, and every single one had been marked unsubstantiated or resolved through counseling. Fenton had been Harmon's academy classmate. They had graduated together, risen together, and covered for each other with the quiet efficiency of men who had long ago decided that loyalty outranked law. That arrangement ended on a Thursday morning when Fenton's name appeared in the SBI report, and the Ridgefield County Sheriff, a careful politician named Roy Ashford, who could read a news cycle the way sailors read wind, called a press conference and fired Fenton on live television. Ashford called it a failure of oversight. The reporters called it what it was. 3 of Harmon's former victims came forward within the first week. Andre Beckett, 26, schoolteacher, no relation to Tommy, had been pulled over, searched, and arrested for a broken taillight that was never actually broken. The charges were dropped after 3 days. But Andre lost his substitute teaching position because the arrest appeared on a background check before the dismissal did. He had been driving for a rideshare company ever since, working doubles to cover the rent he used to pay with a salary and benefits. Patricia Owens, 44, nurse, had been stopped driving home from a 12-hour overnight shift. Harmon said she was weaving. She wasn't. She was tired. He searched her car and found prescription medication, her own, legally prescribed, in a bottle with her name on it. He arrested her for possession. The case was thrown out in 2 weeks, but the arrest record followed her for 3 years and cost her a transfer to a hospital in Charlotte she had been working toward for a decade. Clarence Hughes, 61, retired postal worker, had been stopped on foot while walking to his mailbox on a Sunday morning, in a bathrobe. Harmon said he matched a suspect description. Clarence was 5'6". The suspect was 6'2". Harmon detained him for 40 minutes on his own front lawn, while neighbors watched from behind curtains. No apology, no report filed. Clarence stopped walking to his mailbox after that. His daughter picked up his mail for the next 2 years. He told her it was because of his knees. It wasn't because of his knees. These 3 people sat in the front row of the courtroom when Bryce Harmon's trial began 7 weeks later. They didn't speak to each other before the proceedings. They didn't need to. They had all lived the same story, only the details changed. The prosecution presented Tommy's video, the security footage, the 911 recording, Serena's formal statement, Caldwell's cooperation testimony, given in exchange for a reduced charge of dereliction of duty, Morris's body camera footage, and the 14 buried complaints, each read aloud in open court by the assistant district attorney, who paused after each one and looked directly at the jury. Harmon's defense attorney argued stress, the pressures of rural policing, a lapse in judgment. He did not argue innocence, because the footage made innocence impossible. When the defense rested, the silence in the courtroom lasted 11 seconds. The court reporter noted it in the transcript as it. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They returned with guilty verdicts on 6 counts: deprivation of civil rights under color of law, unlawful search and seizure, unlawful detention, assault, obstruction of justice, and misconduct in office. Judge Ruth Calloway, 70 years old, 32 years on the bench, sentenced Harmon to 5 years in federal prison and a lifetime ban from law enforcement. "You had the power to protect," she said, looking at him over the top of her glasses, "and you chose to harm. The badge you wore was not a weapon, it was a promise, and you broke it every single time you put it on." Harmon stood with his hands clasped behind his back and stared at the table. He did not look at Serena. He did not look at Andre or Patricia or Clarence. He did not look at anyone. Caldwell received 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory retraining. Fenton received 3 years for obstruction and falsifying official records. Sheriff Ashford survived politically, but 3 members of his command staff were forced to resign. And then the governor signed it. Executive Order 47R, later renamed the Wallace Accountability Act after it was codified by the state legislature. Mandatory body cameras for all officers during every civilian interaction. An independent civilian oversight board with subpoena power. A statewide database of officer complaints accessible to every department and hiring committee in the state. And a provision, Serena's provision, written in her handwriting on a legal pad at the kitchen table one night while Daniel slept, that any complaint marked unsubstantiated more than 3 times by the same reviewing officer would trigger an automatic external audit. The pen he used to sign it was the same pen Serena had carried in her manila folder that afternoon, the one Harmon had tossed onto the passenger seat without reading a single word. 1 year later, the Ridgefield fuel stop looked the same. Same 2 pumps, same flat-roofed store, same flickering open sign that nobody had bothered to fix. But something had changed. On the brick wall beside the entrance, bolted at eye level, was a small bronze plaque. It read, "Dignity is not given, it is owed." Installed by the Ridgefield Community Council in honor of those who stood and those who should have. Tommy Beckett no longer worked behind the counter. He was 19 miles away, in his 2nd semester at the State University, studying criminal justice. His application essay was 412 words long, and every word was about a woman in a gray dress who didn't break. The admissions committee accepted him within a week. His scholarship came from a fund he didn't know existed until the letter arrived. He never found out who donated it. Serena never told him. Mrs. Ellen Henderson received the Ridgefield Citizen Courage Award at a town hall ceremony that December. She accepted it in the same floral blouse she had worn the day she pointed her phone at Harmon and pressed record. When the mayor handed her the plaque, she held it at arm's length and read it out loud, then looked at the audience and said, "I didn't do anything courageous. I did what everybody should have done. I just happened to be the only one old enough to not care about the consequences." The room laughed. Then the room cried. Mrs. Henderson did both at the same time. Andre Beckett got his teaching job back. Not the substitute position, a full-time role at a middle school in the next county. His record had been expunged as part of the post-trial review, and the principal who hired him said she had seen the video and wanted someone on her staff who understood what it meant to be wrongly judged. Patricia Owens got her transfer, Charlotte General, the same hospital she had been working toward for a decade. She moved in March, and on her first day, she pinned her new badge to her scrubs and stood in front of the staff bathroom mirror for a full minute, just looking at her own name. Clarence Hughes started walking to his mailbox again. His daughter offered to keep picking it up. He told her no. He told her the knees were better. They both knew what he really meant. The Wallace Accountability Act was adopted by 3 neighboring states within 8 months. A federal version was introduced in committee. It hadn't passed yet. These things take time. But the language was on the floor, and Serena's handwritten provision, the one about automatic external audits, was in every draft. And Serena herself, she still drove the same black Tahoe with the dent on the rear bumper. She had it repainted once, Daniel insisted, but she kept the dent. She never explained why. If you asked, she would change the subject. But if you watched her closely, you might notice that sometimes, when she was parked and alone, she would run her fingers along that dent, the way you run your fingers along a scar that taught you something you needed to know. She still pumped her own gas. She still wore the plain gold wedding band. She still used the back entrance of the Capitol building. And she still didn't introduce herself as the governor's wife, because Serena Wallace had never needed a title to know her own worth. And she had never needed a phone call to prove it. The phone call wasn't for her. It was for every person who had ever stood in a parking lot, or on a front lawn, or at a traffic stop, and had no one to call. No governor, no camera, no witness willing to press record. That was who the Wallace Act was for, not Serena. The ones without a speed dial. The ones who stood alone. And if you're watching this, maybe you've been one of those people. Maybe you've stood somewhere and felt the weight of authority pressing down on you like sun on a metal hood, and you had no one to call and no one who called for you. So here's my question. What would you have done if you were standing at that gas station? Would you have watched? Would you have walked away? Or would you have been the one to press record? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story made you feel something, anything, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Like, subscribe, hit that bell, because stories like this don't tell themselves, and they shouldn't have to.
5 years in federal prison, 14 buried complaints exposed, and a law that with the same pen Harmon touched on the passenger seat without reading a single word. But here's what stays with me. The phone call, it wasn't for Serena. She didn't need it. It was for Andre, who lost his teaching career over a tail light that was never broken. For Patrick Sear, who waited 10 years for hospital transfer that one arrest almost stole forever. For Clarence, a 61-year-old man who stopped working to his own mailbox, not because of fit knees, because of the badge. Serena still drives the same tinted Tahoe, never fixed it. I think she keeps it the way you keep scars that taught you something you needed to know. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever stood somewhere, a parking lot, a traffic stop, a checkout line, and felt that weight pressing down on you? No governor to call, no camera, no one who pressed the record. Because the gas station isn't red, that's still days. The only thing red was somebody answered. Tell me in the comments, would you have worked out, or would you have been the one who pressed the record? Share this with someone who needed it. Subscribe, hit the bell, because a story like Serena's don't tell themselves, and they shouldn't have to.